So I'm going to take you through how you get all of your Shopify transactions into QuickBooks, or we could use any accounting provider, but we're going to use QuickBooks in this case for our example, with as much detail as you like. This is going to be from absolute scratch, so I'll take you through all of the steps. So to start, you're going to want to have a connection to your QuickBooks organization, whether it's a client's account or your own account, and a connection to your Shopify company. So I'll show you what it looks like on the Shopify side. You will probably have already done this with QuickBooks, but it's basically the same process. So you click on Create Integration on your Amalgam homepage. You can see that I'm already logged into a Shopify company, but if I weren't, you would be prompted to log in here. You'll need to have access for at least one of your users to this Shopify organization. It takes you to the Amalgam page. When you click on that link, you just say Open App, and it's going to redirect you back to Amalgam. Integration created successfully. So now this is one of your Shopify integrations. And to use that, I'm just going to open up a new Excel workbook. So we're going to start from a blank workbook. So as you probably already know, I'm using Excel. You could use Google Sheets if you like. The plugin lives up here in the top. It's a little bit different for Google Sheets, but we've got plenty of other videos on the exact differences there. So I'm going to go to Shopify. I'm going to choose the order line summary. You could do the orders detail, which is a report you're probably already familiar with. It's available via CSV in Shopify, but it takes a little while to load and it gets sent to you as an email. So I'm going to use this order line summary because it's a little briefer and it'll help us get the specific info. You get to choose which company you want to connect with. We're going to use the store that we just connected to here. And as with any Amalgam report, it's going to open as a new tab here. I won't actually rename it. And I'm just going to run this report for the first of the year to today. So you will see this is a test company with test data in it. And if you look at this, it's got some useful stuff, but every sale is for exactly 10 cents. We don't have any discounts, returns, shipping, or taxes. So I'm just going to copy paste some test data that I've created for the purposes of this to give us a little bit more of a robust data set. If you're working with a company that you're actually living and breathing in all day, it's going to look a bit more like this than what I just showed you, but I wanted to show you the process of actually running the report live. So here's going to be our data set. So this is going to tell us all the key info we need on all the sales made over this point in time. I'm going to move my head over here so that we can look at the actual sheets. I'm going to rename this Shopify, and then I'm going to use this sheet as my reconciliation. But first, let me show you how you actually upload this data. So I'm going to go into QuickBooks. Now, you have some options when you're uploading Shopify data. I'm going to use journal entries because I think that's the simplest to show, but you could certainly add this as a sales receipt. There's lots of different ways to make this appear correct in your QuickBooks company, but I'm going to use journal entries because this is applicable to any accounting platform you might use. I'll connect to ABC Widgets, and again, ABC Widgets, fake company. So bear with me, the chart of accounts is not going to look exactly like a e-commerce company might, but you'll get the basic idea here. So as you might know, our journal entry resource templates, any data you put in here is going to flow through into QuickBooks and you'll be able to upload it. So we're going to create something with today's date. Let's just go with equals today here. Might as well use formulas where we can. And so we're going to have a couple of different lines that we're going to use. So we're going to have gross sales. We're going to have discounts, returns. We're going to have shipping and sales tax. And then we're probably going to have a clearing account. Depending on how you book your Shopify sales, you're most likely going to have a clearing account on the end here. Now, we're going to have to pick which account we're going to use for each of these. So again, we'll go with sales of product for the sales. Discounts, fortunately we have one in there. Looks like we don't have returns, so I'm just going to actually book this as a debit to sales. Not very good accounting, but you'll bear with me because your company will have a correct account for that to go into. As you probably know, this drop-down menu is synced with whatever happens to be in the account that you've connected to, so you'll have a different set of options for your business directly. Shipping, again, this should be an item on our P&L, an income item, but I'm just going to book it as this expense because it has vaguely the same name. Again, your mileage will be different. Sales tax to pay, fortunately that is an account that we have tracked. And then because I don't have a clearing account, I'm going to have to use this cash account here. Again, you will set up your chart of accounts correctly for everything that we need to do here. So what we could do is we could just use a sum of these columns to give us everything we need. So I could just sum column T, and that's going to give us the total amount of sales over this time period that we ran the report from. Similarly, I could do the same for discounts. Looks like I need to add the sum formula. I could do the same for returns. I could do the same for shipping. I could do the same for taxes. Oops. And then I can just create a plug for this final line. And here you've got a correct journal entry that we can just upload. Now, that's all well and good. We've got an aggregate amount, and what you could do is you could just have this be a full month. So we could do 4/1, 2, 4, 30. You can pull down all the transactions in that time period, and then you can link your date to this time. Because we've just edited this, I'm going to upload this with the new date. So this is now synced. But let's say you want to actually upload every single one of these transactions as its own separate journal entry, so you can have a much more detailed piece of information. I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, as you probably will be aware, you're about to watch me work in Excel for about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's just going to be formulas. So if that's not what you're looking for and you're comfortable with this month-end close, a lot of great companies do things exactly this way. You can certainly do it this way. Let me show you how you can get every single one in there. So we're going to need to aggregate this data on an order-by-order level. And as you probably can see, some of these lines are multiple lines for the same order. So we're going to need to actually sum each of these values for each order. Now I'm going to use something that I like, which is the unique formula. And that's basically just going to go and grab every unique value from this sheet over this time period. So you can see that these are all grouped together. I'm just going to copy these as values now. So here are all my orders. Now you can also see that these are just incrementing values, so you can create formulas to give you all of these. But I can then do a sum if formula. I like sum ifs. You're going to first grab the range to sum, which in this case is going to be gross sales. I'm not going to lock that in place because we're going to want this to flow to the right. Then I'm going to have my condition range, which is going to be the order name. And then my only condition is going to be this formula here, which again, I'm going to lock just to this column. So you can see these formulas now are going to give me all of this information but aggregated by order. Now we're going to want to know what the date of each of these orders is so we can book the journal entry correctly. So let me look at this here. So the date is going to be, we'll probably use a VLOOKUP for this. We're going to look up this number. We're going to look it up in these two columns here. I'm going to lock that in place, 2, 0. So that's going to tell us to look it up in the second column. Here we go. We have a date value. And I should probably set this, whoops, format cells, choose a date, and here we go. Now, is this the best example data because they're all from the exact same date? Maybe not, but you're going to get the basic idea here. So what's the issue we have here? So in order to create a correct journal entry, let me just rename this journals so it looks nicer. We're going to take one order and we're going to turn it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different lines. So how are we going to split that out? Here's how I like to do this. I'll do one column here, which is order, I'll call it index line order num account actually let's, how do we do index line, so this is going to be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So these are all going to be from the first order. I like to highlight things blue when they're hard-coded. And then for each subsequent one, we're going to increment it by 1. Now this is going to be 1 equals this plus 1. And so this is going to go all the way up to 6 and then back down to 1 again. So what's our logic going to be? It's going to be if this is not equal to this 1, else this plus 1. So this is going to do this for us. Nice. Now how are we going to use this? So this is where we have to actually create our journal entry. So we've got a credit, we've got a debit, we've got an account, and we've got a description. So credit, actually let's do date, credit, debit, account, description. And I'm also going to look up our order number here. So I'm going to use the offset formula here. Now, what does that do? All it does is you take a starting row, you say how many rows away from that do you want? So this is going to go down 1 row. How many columns away? 0. So we're going to go, starting here, we're going to go 1 row down and then 0 rows to the right. So because this is index number 1, it's going to grab this. So as you can see, it's going to all be 124, but when we move on to the next one, it's 123. Cool. So let's copy all this down and see when it disappears. So you can see we run out of data at some point. We only have 20 rows of data. Makes sense? Cool. So our description is going to be, let's take these right here. So what this is going to be equals this, and a space, so let's make a line, and this. So we're going to be creating a nuanced description for each one of these lines to go in this description column. In order to do this, I'm going to have to copy this all down, And there you go. Our descriptions are going to be pretty easy to understand. Now, we're going to have to set our accounts, and I'm going to copy the cells over here into our reconciliation. The cool thing about that is that Amalgam sets up this drop-down menu that's going to have your chart of accounts in it. So if at any point you decide you want to change this, you can. And I'm just going to make this all link to this first row. So at any point, I can decide that I want this discounts given to be depreciation instead, and it's going to actually change that in all of my journal entries. Obviously, that's not how we want it to go. Now, the one tricky thing about journals in Amalgam is that they want to look like this, where the date is on the first row, but not any of the subsequent rows. So we can't do the same logic that we did for this for our date. So we're going to want to start with basically the same system. We're going to say, in fact, I'll just copy right over here, but we're going to offset it from this date here. And let's set this to be a date value. Cool. What's the problem? It's going to be on every single row. So we don't want this. So we're going to use that same formula we did before. If this is not equal to this, set the date. Otherwise, I'm just going to use two quotations to tell it to make it empty. So what does this do? It only adds the date on each row. Now, I think we're using the wrong line. We want to be using this line. Yeah, that's not good. We're not actually seeing an issue, but if we were to have things that were not all the same date, we would. So, there you go. Now it's just a matter of actually grabbing the credit and the debit. Now, we could set this up to be formulaic, but I would much rather just basically hard copy this. So we're going to say, we're going to use the offset again. We're going to start with gross sales. We're going to use this number of rows. Actually, you know what? We're going to do something tricky here. We're going to start over here. So we're going to use this number of rows, and then we're going to offset it by this number of columns. Now, what does that mean? So for this first one, it's going to be one row down and one column down, and we're going to get this gross sales. For this one, though, it's going to be one row down and two columns down. So we're going to be able to use this same formula for discounts, the same formula for returns, same for shipping, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the formula we're going to use. I'm going to lock these to the column because we're going to use this for both credit and debit. So here's what we do. This is how we're formatting it, right? By the way, I'm not an accountant, so if I'm getting the credits and debits wrong, that would be a pretty classic mistake for me to be making. You're going to have to bear with me. Some of you are probably shouting at your computer saying, that's terrible, that's wrong, but bear with me. We're going to use this plug, minus this. And so now we're just going to copy this down. And because it's more than one column, you just have to get the number of rows right. So here you go. So now we've got a complete journal entry for every single one of these lines. And all we have to do is actually link our journals tab to this data. So oops, that's not what we want. Oh. So we're going to want to reload this whole template. That's a bummer. This is something you should look out for. We have a bunch of hidden rows and hidden columns. And as you know, if you're copying stuff across rows and columns, but there's some hidden stuff in between, it's going to mess up the number of columns in your sheet. So when we just did that, we tried to link our date values, and then it thought that the next row or the next column over was actually some of this hidden stuff. We've got all sorts of fun hidden tools in these upload templates, but we're just going to use the simple stuff for now. So I'll be more direct in my linking. We're going to link our credits. We're going to link our debits. Is this right? Yeah, it looks right. We're going to link the account. Now, keep in mind that there's a data validation here, so it's not going to like it if you are linking something that is not one of your chart of accounts. So for example, if I have not an account over here, and I try and link this cell, it's going to give me an error. That's a good thing. You don't want to accidentally be creating new chart of accounts when you're doing an upload. So our sheet's not going to let you do that. And so here's one journal entry. But if we just copy this all down, this is going to give you, and you'll see our sheet will catch up with all the conditional formatting. These are all of these until we get to the point where there's no data, and you don't want this down here. Pretty cool, right? So this would be a journal entry for every single one of these order lines with data in the description field. I'm going to copy down this upload, and we're going to upload all of these at once. Now, one thing to flag, if you want to upload something, it needs to say upload in the action column. If you want to delete something, it needs to say delete in the action column. Pretty easy to understand, but easy to miss the first time you do this. All we got to do now is hit upload, give it a moment. And there you go. We just loaded it all. So hopefully that makes sense as a way to work through this. Probably some of this stuff in the reconciliation tab was a little arcane and nuanced for some of you. This is how I would do it. We've got other ways of doing it. And we can certainly help you out if you want to reach out to us on a way to actually work through this in Excel. The important thing, though, is that you have the ability to change any of this logic. So if you have specific stuff that you need to work through, you could do this not just order by order, but you could do it SKU by SKU if you wanted to. You can put as much or as little data into QuickBooks as you like. If you happen to be using something like classes or locations, those are in these hidden columns that you can't see initially, and we can actually help you link that stuff up. We give you the drop-down options for all of it. If you want to allocate it by customer, you can do that. Unlimited options, all the data is there available for you. You just have to take what you want from the report, Shopify in this case, and figure out how you want to get it into QuickBooks in the correct way. That's the start to finish process. Hope that was helpful to some people.